The Western Cape Blood Service, also known as the WCBS, is one of 2 blood services that operate within South Africa. Donors and patients are its priority, whilst it facilitates the entire process of blood collection, testing, component processing, storage, distribution, and issuing of blood products.
Dear listener, welcome to the Lifeblood Podcast. I'm Hayley Arley, Hospital Liaison Officer, and joining me is Dr. Caroline Hilton, who is Lead Medical Consultant for the Western Cape Blood Service, our guest. Glad to have you, Caroline.
Thank you for inviting me to speak on the podcast today.
In this episode, we will find out what your blood group says about you and your health. Caroline, why are blood types important?
So Hayley, blood types are important mainly if you require blood transfusion one day as a patient in the hospital. And let's start by talking about the different blood types that we have. We refer to the ABO blood group system, and that means that there are 4 different types of blood groups that you could potentially be. That's type A, type B, type AB, and type O. And to determine your blood group, you've actually got to look at your red blood cells and see which proteins are on the outside of your red blood cells. If you're type A, you've got an A protein on your red blood cell. If you're type B, you've got a B protein on your red cell. If you're type AB, you've got the A and the B proteins on your red cells. And if you lack if you don't have either the A or the B proteins on your red blood cells, then you're type O. So these are the different types of ABO blood groups that there can be. And you as a patient in the hospital will need to make sure that you get the correct type of blood to avoid something called an incompatible blood transfusion, which can be potentially life-threatening.
Okay. And why is Group O the universal donor?
So as I mentioned, if you're type O, it means that you don't have the A or the B proteins on your red cells. So that if you were to transfuse your red cells as a type O donor to a patient, those proteins, seeing as they don't exist on the red blood cell, they cannot interact with the antibodies in your system. So this means that Group O blood or red cells can be received by absolutely any patient available. So this means that Group O is very useful for emergency transfusions because we know it's a safe blood group to give to anybody because it doesn't have those proteins on the surface of the red cells.
Great. And why is Group AB the universal recipient?
So we call people who are Group AB universal recipients because interestingly, as patients, they can receive any type of blood group. As I mentioned earlier, when you're Group AB, it means that you have both A and B proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. But at the same time, you lack any antibodies towards those A or B proteins in your plasma. And these antibodies cause a potential problem if they react with the proteins on red cells. So seeing as you don't have any of those antibodies, you can receive any type of red blood cell without having complications. So this is quite useful being an AB patient.
And what is a rare blood type?
So rare blood types are quite interesting. And so far we've discussed only the A and B proteins that are present on red blood cells. But actually there are a lot of other proteins that could potentially be present. And when you have a rare blood type, this means that you have, along with whether you have the A or the B or neither of those proteins on your red cells, the additional proteins that could be present that could make you have a rare blood group. But it also, if you lack some of the proteins that are present on red blood cells, this also makes you regarded as having a rare blood group. Examples of rare blood group that perhaps you've heard of before are the Bombay or Diego blood groups. And also, if we identify donors who do have a rare blood group, we keep their contact details and information in a separate register for rare blood group donors so that we can access this information and try and recruit these donors if a patient with a rare blood group comes to the fore and we need to find compatible blood for them.
Can your blood type change?
So this is an interesting question. Typically, no, your blood group can't change. You will have the same blood group from the time you're born to well into your elderly years. But there's some very rare instances where you can change your blood group. But this would only happen if, for example, you had a bone marrow transplant. Perhaps you had some kind of leukemia or lymphoma and required a bone marrow transplant. Or there are some quite rare and quite severe bacterial infections that can temporarily change the shape of your red cell proteins, which makes it look like your blood group has changed. But this should revert back to your original blood group in the end.
Okay. And how can your blood type affect pregnancy?
So it's really important for you to know your blood type when you fall pregnant. Specifically, a blood type that we haven't really mentioned in this podcast, which is your RH group. And this refers to a different protein called RhD, although there are different types of RH that can be present on your red cells. And if you have the RhD protein, then you're what we refer to as positive. So you're A positive, B positive. But if you lack that RhD protein on your red cells, then you're referred to as negative. So O negative, A negative, etc. So women who are Rh negative need to be careful, particularly in their second pregnancies, that they don't have any antibodies towards that RhD protein that could compromise the health of their baby if their baby is a type Rh positive. It all gets a little bit confusing, so I won't go into the pathophysiology of Rh incompatibility, but yes, just for our donors to know that if they are a negative blood group, meaning they don't have the RhD protein, they must have their antibody levels measured very carefully and regularly throughout their pregnancy.
And which blood group do mosquitoes like?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So I have seen some research about this topic, and it's a contentious one in that some studies have actually shown that mosquitoes, for some reason, and I don't know how a mosquito could know someone's blood group by buzzing around them, but the research shows that they prefer people with type O blood, and that type A blood group is their least favorite. But as I said, I don't think this has been absolutely proven. And as far as I understand, studies rather show that mosquitoes are attracted to specific skin odors and natural bacteria on the skin, to higher body temperatures and darker clothing color, rather than to the blood type of the person they're planning to bite. So it's difficult to say, but some theories show that apparently mosquitoes prefer type O victims.
Shame. And here's another interesting one. Do blood group diets work?
So this question comes up quite regularly, and again, it's something that's not actually proven scientifically. But in the late 1990s, a person by the name of Peter de Ademo came up with a theory that certain people within certain blood groups should follow specific types of diets and exercise routines to sort of reach optimal health. So he basically suggested that type A donors should follow vegetarian diets, type B donors should have a high dairy content, and that type AB donors can follow a combination of the vegetarian and high dairy diet, while type O donors should focus on a diet that's high in animal protein. But as I said, this is absolutely theoretical and it's never been shown to have any sort of scientific basis. So I don't personally believe in this diet theory, but apparently it does work for other people.
Thanks so much for the insights shared, Caroline.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to our donors who are making the life-saving donations every day.
Thank you for listening in. Until next time, do something remarkable. Donate blood.